Welcome to Breaking Bread. It's the place that brings people together around the table. And today we're at Jumeirah Burj Al Arab, and our guest is Becky Anderson, host of Connect the World and managing editor of CNN Abu Dhabi. Becky, thanks so much for joining us today.
Absolute pleasure. Wonderful to be here again.
Well, we've been waiting for you for a very long time.
Well, I'm sorry, but it's good to be here.
Good to
be here
have
at the Burj Al Arab.
You visited the UAE 25 years ago for the first time, and you've been a familiar face on our screens for very, very long. I want to hear about the first time you visited and what you remember from then.
I think I want to say that the first time I came was about 98, 99. Certainly I know that the Burj Al Arab, where we are now, celebrated its 25th anniversary last year, which means it went up in 1999. So it was around that time. I remember this being the only building effectively on this stretch of the coastline. Amazing building. And when it went up, you could only imagine just how incredible it was. So I started coming when I started with CNN around 1999.
Do you remember what brought you here? What story?
So I think one of the first stories would have been the golf at the Emirates golf course, the Dubai Desert Classic. I had a golf show, feature show back in the day, as well as my news show. So we came for that, and I interviewed Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, the ruler of Dubai, at the golf course. And I want to say around 1999, 2000.
I'm
so
very
that would
envious.
it would have been one of the first times I came in. And I remember being with Muhammad Alabar, who is the head of 𝐬𝐮𝐬𝐫𝐤, of course, big real estate company here. And I remember Mohammed driving me back to the airport because I was late for my flight with my golf clubs in the back of his car, driving us to the airport and telling me about the vision for Dubai then, and it was the vision for 2010.
Wow.
And this was a decade out, and he was talking to me about as we left the golf course and drove towards the airport, he said, this area will look like downtown Manhattan within a decade, and there'll be a metro here, and this place will be built up. And we were driving down the 𝐵𝐸𝐺 road, which is the main road, as you know, here.
How many
and
lanes?
There was I want to say two lanes at that stage, which is now a 7-lane both side highway, right?
It is. Full at all times of the
Full
day.
at all times. I mean, the traffic is problematic. And I remember him telling me about this vision for this Manhattan skyline, which would be what we now know to be downtown Dubai, and a metro. And I remember thinking, with the greatest of respect, Mr. Alabar, I can't see this happening. Now, never bet against Dubai is what I've learned over the years. Never bet against the UAE because, of course, you know, when they say that they have a goal, when they say they have a strategy, when they launch a vision, you've got to understand that they will complete and execute on that vision. They really will. But it's, you know, that's sort of indicative of my sort of relationship with Dubai and the UAE, because over the years I've witnessed the evolution of this place sort of through the lens of these various iterations of visions and strategies until where we are today.
And when you say he was talking about this great vision that you were skeptical about, why? What did Dubai feel like at that time?
Because Dubai was clearly on the move at that time, and it clearly had great ambition, and it clearly had already, in its sort of first kind of very sort of public international iteration, it already had an airline that was beginning to punch above its weight, let's say. It was a place that people would have struggled to put a pin in the map, I think. You know, a lot of people still didn't know where Dubai was, but Emirates was a brand that was beginning to take off. DP World perhaps was the other big brand here that people who knew. But yeah, it was a place that if you came and that to bet against these visions or these goals or these sort of what you could consider pipe dreams was probably not a very sensible idea. And you know, consequently, I've just seen the evolution of the place, and it's been remarkable.
And you've stayed here.
Yeah, and I've stayed here. I stayed over the years. I came in and out of Dubai and Abu Dhabi. I came in and out of the UAE many, many times before I was lucky enough to get the opportunity to move here with my show in 2014.
And I want to pause and talk about that. But beforehand, you were aware of the UAE, you were aware of the GCC, which many others wouldn't have.
Mm-hmm.
So what was your perception, if you can remember and take yourself back?
I think the perception, and certainly my perception of this place was, of the GCC, was that I could see the ambition for Dubai and the UAE, and perhaps Dubai very specifically as early as 2000, which set it apart from the rest of the GCC.
And when you arrived, you were shown around by probably, well, the most influential person in Dubai, His Highness Sheikh Mohammed, and taken around by Muhammad Alabar, so someone who's been absolutely instrumental in the growth of this place, and no better people. How many times have you interviewed His Highness?
I've interviewed His Highness, I think just that once, but I've met His Highness a number of times. The first time I met His Highness was in 1999 in London, in the CNN bureau in London. He was passing through. We already had a good relationship with him. We were working towards setting up the CNN Arabic services, which have been established here in Dubai since 2002. And that was in the first iteration of sort of CNN internet stroke media city.
Why Dubai?
So because I think, you know, there was a clear opportunity for CNN to establish, you know, an Arabic website here. Remember back in the day, this was talking about, you know, establishing our language websites, and Dubai was as good a place as any. It was offering, you know, an opportunity to set up business here. We could see the evolution of the place. I mean, Internet Media City, as it was known back in the day, would have been a great opportunity. This was our Arabic.com, you know, CNN/Arabic.com website, and so it was as good an opportunity as any. And so we were, you know, the value that we placed in Dubai as an opportunity to headquarter our Arabic services here showed our commitment as an organization. It was safe, stable. You know, when you are establishing a regional headquarters for an organization as big as CNN, we have bureau around the region, so in Beirut and in Jerusalem, in Turkey, in Egypt. So we have bureau, which we have had for years. I mean, CNN has been covering the story of the Middle East as long as CNN has been around, for 45 years.
So 2014, you moved to Abu Dhabi. You're given this opportunity.
Yes.
Why do you take it?
I always felt when I got to the airport in London and flew out to Dubai and then consequently Abu Dhabi, I just got a real feeling of like I'm alive. Because I always knew when I got here, the place would feel alive. And I'd always feel like I was evolving as a person. So the opportunity to do something different in a place that I always got a kick out of coming to. And then the wider story for me.
So you didn't think twice?
I didn't think twice about it.
So you didn't think you'd be staying here, living here, raising children here?
Not necessarily. No. Absolutely. None of this was necessarily part of the plan. It was, you know, we've been open for 5 years in Abu Dhabi. It could do with a bit of Becky. Yeah. I mean, other people said that wasn't my line, but you know, we need a big show to get out there, establish this place properly. And within a year of being out here, they offered me the managing editor's job. Now, I'm not sure that I would have been offered that second hat, which I'm incredibly grateful for and take very, very seriously. I'm not sure that I would have been offered that, you know, that leadership role somewhere else.
Let's talk about the evolving region.
Yeah.
The UAE has really emerged as a global powerhouse, and a theme that repeats itself is how safe it is here. You've even mentioned it. What do you think attributes to that?
As a mum, bringing up a family here is incredibly important, and adds to with 2 young kids. It adds to my sense of well-being and the livability of Abu Dhabi and the UAE as a place, and I know it is part and parcel of the offer that Dubai and the UAE makes to people interested in coming to the country. So, you know, that is a lot to do with leadership. You know, this is a place which prides itself on its security and safety. Given where we are in the world, in this region, obviously this, you know, that's a real unique selling point to a degree, that the Gulf is as safe and secure in this country, very specifically. When you consider what is going on around the region, you know, the sort of classic buckets of news, or, you know, from this region, sadly, for so long have been about conflict.
But the perception has also changed about the UAE.
Right.
In the past 20 years.
Yeah.
The story of the UAE has changed in many ways.
You know, this country wears UAE first on its sleeve, and rightly so. And there should be no excuse about that. There doesn't need to be an excuse about a country that says we have a vision, an economic vision, and everything else will kind of, you know, cascade into that. So there's been a very clear policy from the leadership here, which is we want to be more than an oasis of safety and security.
And using soft powers in a really
Absolutely.
smart way
In
to
a
leverage
very
its global
in
position.
a very smart way.
What does the West misunderstand about the GCC, the Middle East?
I think the rest of the world has misperceptions, which we still should be very mindful to try and help knock back. I think because for so long this has been a region which has been dominated by conflict, as far as the headlines are concerned. We have overlooked or underestimated the power of the evolving visions in the GCC, in the UAE, Qatar, Saudi, for example, and the influence that their investments, both outbound and inbound, are having on the countries, and the opportunity to cascade the success that is being had here in this country and around the region across the wider region. And you are seeing that more as you look to the sort of opportunities that, for example, the Abraham Accords afford. You know, when economic integration, de-escalation, you know, opportunities. I think there's a number of things. There is the change in the architecture, change in the security architecture in this region has come at the same time that you see the success of these visions bearing fruit. And so I think, but the question is, can the success that we see in the GCC cascade through the rest of the region? And I think that's still
yet to be seen.
Yet to be seen.
And then to add another element is a new U.S. administration.
Correct.
Which I'd be very curious to hear how you think a Trump administration can influence the Middle East.
We know this is an administration coming out of the gate and very determined to make it clear where it's at in its first 100 days. This is a transactional administration with a very transactional commander-in-chief who is also, as we all know, a disruptor-in-chief. So I think this region, particularly this country, which is a very transactional place, will see great opportunity in a Donald Trump administration, which is very focused on where its relationships lie and where its allies can, you know, where it can come together with its friends. It is an administration which says it looks for peace, is not interested in war, that wants to extend the Abraham Accords because it sees that as integral to its Middle East policy, that being peace and prosperity for the Middle East rather than disruption and conflict. I think it remains to be seen just how that plays out. We've only really seen the beginnings of the evolution of what Donald Trump's policy on the Middle East might look like. But its policy, you know, Donald Trump's policy towards Iran will have a cascade effect around this region.
And you're a storyteller, and it's never really within your position to say what you think, but rather to share the stories and well, represent in a way the Middle East to the West, but also, well, connect the world, as your show is called. You're here to connect the world and maybe explain.
One of the beauties of being here, and one of the challenges that I have every day, is this region is complicated. What's wonderful about this region, it is complicated, it is full of nuance, it is full of conspiracy theories, it is never easy to understand. You have to live and breathe this region to really understand this region. All of that is what's wonderful about this region. One of the reasons I came out here is I love its discursive nature. So, you know, I think we've lost the ability in the West to discuss, to sit down and talk about things. But here, in this region, it is a discursive culture. It's an oral culture. People sit down and they listen to storytellers. You know, from the leadership down, everybody I know who is from this region, who's grown up in this region, has grown up in a culture where people have told generational to generational stories. But what makes it difficult to be not difficult, but the challenge as a storyteller from this region is ensuring that you don't tell the story in too basic a way. It never feels like there's anything, you know,
and how to
telling
tell
a linear story here is very tough. And it doesn't, you know, this place deserves, this region deserves, certainly from international media, a much better, more nuanced and thorough understanding of the place. It's the reason I came here in 2014. I said I was coming to cover this region on and from this region. I said you can't see this region through the lens, through the prism of Washington, London, Paris or Berlin. We must see this region and give this CNN's audience an opportunity to see this region through the lens of this region, which is why my relationships here in Dubai, my relationships in Abu Dhabi, my relationships around the region are so important to me. You'll very rarely see on my show or on any of the digital or social work we do, you'll very rarely see a Western voice, a Western leader, politician, and on, you know, and away from news, much of what else we do, arts, culture, entertainment, sports, is all from this region. This is an opportunity. Without giving this region a voice, nobody will understand the nuance of this region. People are really interested in my view of amongst my friends, you know, my view, for what it's worth, of what's going on around the region, you know, at the moment in Gaza and in Lebanon and in Syria and the rest. And so that's, and I, you know, and so my 2-hour primetime news show will absolutely reflect that.
So when Becky's not on air,
with
this
doing?
very intense job, how does Becky wind down?
Well, I have a very young family, so these days, when I'm not on air at that very intense work that I do, I have what is much harder. I have the
agreed.
Having a young family is equally as hard, if not harder. It's more time. You know, it takes more of you, and rightly so. I am very blessed to have my family, to have a young family here that I'm bringing up. So a lot of my time, I have to say, is spent at soft play areas or at SeaWorld or the theme parks that have emerged. I mean, I'm much more interested in what the offer is for families than I ever was before I had my family here.
Okay, now I know who to ask for ideas for kids' activities.
Yeah. But also, I mean, I'm a keen sport. I mean, I'm very keen on sport myself. I've always been a keen tennis and golf player. So I do as much as that as possible. I don't get a lot of time to do it. I've taken up paddle recently. That's a big
very
sport
nice.
here.
Yes.
I hadn't.
It's a rite of
played.
passage.
It's a rite of passage. Here in this country, there's been a massive investment in paddle, and it's wonderful. Somebody once said to me, "You've got to play paddle because it's such fun." Now, if you're a tennis player and somebody tells you you've got to do something, it's such fun, it's a complete turn-off. But in fact, it's true. It is a lot of fun.
And Becky, I invited you for lunch, and yet I've not given you any food.
I'm going to get
you
hungry in a minute.
Starving.
It's wonderful. It's so nice to talk to you.
Last question, then you get to eat, I promise. What is next for you?
I'm very happy here. But you know, unless you know something I don't, if you ask me, what do I want to do next? Now, I have to say, hand on my heart, I'm very happy doing what I'm doing here with a young family growing up in the UAE. I think we're in the right place at the right time. We, I say, as a family, both for me professionally and personally. So if you ask me, what do I want to do next? At the moment, I see that very squarely allied to what CNN will do next, which is in a newly transformed sort of 2.0 digital first iteration. I'm excited about being part of the senior leadership team because I think we've got a lot to do as CNN gravitates towards where audiences are now consuming their news. So I think we're in a very challenged media landscape, but a media landscape that's full of opportunities. Mm-hmm. I worry enormously about the influence of AI on media, but I'm incredibly excited about the opportunities that it affords us. I don't see AI as a master, but as a digital assistant. We don't use AI in our journalism. In journalism, you won't see any AI-generated journalism on CNN, but we use AI to work out where our audiences are going, what our audiences are after. So it's been really interesting to be in senior leadership at a big media brand like CNN in this new era, which is incredibly disrupted, and will continue to be disrupted. But in this disruptive new media environment, I think
we're all
learning. So many opportunities.
We're all learning.
Absolutely. And everything has changed over the 25 years or 30 years that I've been in journalism, and yet nothing has changed. Everything has changed about the way that we gather news, the technology that we use when we deploy on a breaking news story. We used to carry hundreds of kilograms worth of equipment. We now can travel really, really lightly. But what hasn't changed is,
content.
Facts first,
Content is king.
Content is king. Storytelling should be rich and powerful. You've got to fact checking. The way that our brand was set up was to be facts first, truthful. My colleague Christian will say, truthful, not neutral. I think, I'm often asked, how do you stay neutral? How do you stay objective? I think it's very hard to be objective as a journalist. It's very hard to be objective when you go into a war zone. It's very hard as a human being to be. So we shouldn't be neutral necessarily. We should be truthful. And CNN's brand speaks to truth and facts first. And so it means that, our toolkit that includes verification skills, open source, investigative journalism, he said, all of that stuff there's a lot of new tools out there. But at the end of the day, at the heart of the story are people, and at the heart of the story is the truth.
Becky, thank you so much for this. Are you ready to eat?
I'm so ready to eat. Thank you.
Shall we feed you?
Please,
okay.
feed me.
Feed Becky,
feed
please.
me, she says. What a joy. It's been an absolute joy. Thank you.
So
Thank
fun.
you.